Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dishing Drama with Dana Wilkey Uncensored. We have officially moved to Patreon. Here's a sneak peek of Dishing Drama with Dana Wilkey.
Come on, bitch, let's go.
Oh, wow. Another day. Another scandal. I've been covering, as you guys know, Crazy Days and Nights and Enty's drama that's been, or I should say, a scandal that has been unfolding. It's only fair Enty does it to everyone else. Today I have on the show Cassandra, who, if you guys don't know who Cassandra is, Cassandra was a person who did a podcast with Enty. And in the process of doing this podcast with Enty, it was like an 80s oriented podcast. He and her developed a relationship. And well, I'm going to let her tell the story rather than, tell you guys the detail today. In case you guys don't know, Cassandra is currently being sued by Crazy Days and Nights Enty as a stalker, and she is countersuing him in the same type of way as like a predator. I'm paraphrasing. She has a podcast and a Patreon called Drenched in Drama, where she spills a lot of the receipts that you would want to hear if you're interested in this topic. For those of you who don't know and live under a rock, Enty has been a gossip blogger anonymous for 20 years through a website called Crazy Days and Nights. And he also has started a podcast about 5 years ago, again, on this Crazy Days and Nights thing. He's got thousands of Patreons. He's very, very popular. Whenever you see a blind item, generally speaking, it comes from him. He does reveals as to who he's talking about after a few weeks, once he drops these blinds. Some of them turn out to be true. Some of them turn out to be false. Some he never, seems to reveal. I don't know, they go off a cliff somewhere. But needless to say, everybody understood that Enty was an entertainment lawyer that was interacting with a lot of Hollywood and had a lot of actor friends, et cetera, that he was deriving his gossip from. And then it came out in this process of this legal dispute between Cassandra and Enty that his wife, because it turns out Enty's married, even though he presents himself as kind of single to women, I guess he's collaborating with, that his wife said he's just, I'm paraphrasing, full of shit about everything, and that he really doesn't have any real insider scoop. And she doesn't really go into it much further than that, except she says like some of the celebrities he says he knows, he doesn't know. And that's because she's mad at him at the time because of the huge betrayal, which you guys may have like an idea about, but this is going to be a more in-depth look at it. So today's show is going to be about who Enty is, where we are in the dispute between Enty and Cassandra, and some other information that I wanted to ask Cassandra about that I'm not clear on. And I think you guys would appreciate getting clarity on. And that is going to be today's show. Before we get started, I want to give you guys a trigger warning. If you've been in a domestic abuse situation or just been dragged through it with a narcissist, you probably don't want to listen to the show because you may find it triggering. Also, I'm going to be doing the show where Cassandra and I anchor most of the things that we talk about in evidence so that it doesn't get circumstantial in any way. This show is not for entertainment purposes today, and therefore we are going to be anchoring it into evidence. Now, before we get going, I just want to say that I read several of the comments in some of the episodes to do with this, and I saw that some people were like, well, maybe we shouldn't be supportive to some of these allegations and claims. And I just wanted to start by saying that, have you guys heard about what Armie Hammer has been up to since he had his fall from grace and allegedly went to a sex obsessed or sex addicted program in rehab and supposedly was, being a good boy now and wasn't going to abuse women anymore and all these things. Of course, the criminal charges were dropped against him and all of this. Well, recently, Tommy Lee's wife has a podcast and she had her good friend on the podcast, and her good friend tells a story that basically after all this happened and the dust settled, Armie Hammer is still being a narcissist, being abusive to women, and she got an STD from him. He didn't tell her he had a problem. Also, he bit her so hard that she had to tell him to stop, and it really scared her. And he also played the same type of mind games he played with the previous women on her. And so it's obvious to me that people that are sick in this type of way can't stop. And they just repeat hurting women over and over again, if that's their target. I would imagine it happens also in the gay community, etc. And essentially, they're just going to keep doing it. So the only thing you can do really is get the word out so people don't, when they get approached or come in contact with these types of people, get caught off guard and become victimized by their unethical mind-fucking practices. I'm going to play you some key moments from this interview that weren't played in the tabloids, because I know some of them did play some of this interview already. Anyway, I noticed some people who were negatively impacted by Armie Hammer posting this on their page. So it, in particular, caught my attention because obviously this was not just something that Brittany Schmitt, the comedian, said to her very good friend, Brittany Furlan Lee, who's Tommy Lee's wife, on her podcast, This Is the Worst. But this is something that actually, someone who was impacted negatively by Armie Hammer wanted people to know that she connected with, okay? So it's kind of like even more important than, say, the rest of the interview.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
This is absolutely crazy, Brittany. I mean, this is you. So
I know. Got to drop the Armie Hammer. So I briefly mentioned last episode having a situationship with a monster, with a bad guy who gave me an STD, and that was all I was going to say. Because I think, I knew going into it, his reputation preceded himself. I knew he was a bad guy. I knew tattooing strangers, he was like calling it Cannibal Ink.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he thought he was like being funny, and I'm like, maybe don't lean into that. Maybe don't. But yeah, we got matching tattoos the first night, which I was in a dark place. Like, let's be honest. I was not mentally strong. I'm not proud of the fact I even entered into this thing, let alone that I got like mentally fucked by him.
I remember when you told me you were seeing him.
Here's the thing is he's an actor, and he's a really good actor. Mm-hmm. And he's been given a new script on how to act to do this whole Hollywood recovery arc or redemption arc thing, and it's all very convincing because like he is a great actor. Like that's the thing. I remember there was a point when we were hanging out and he was like, I'm gonna go to acting class, and I was like, I don't think it's the acting that needs work, I think it's who you are as a person. Like I said, it's a short relationship, but it was a lot in a short period of time. And then the next day I woke up to a text of him saying he hooked up with another girl. He's like, my ex-wife pissed me off, and, the girls, whatever. He goes into this whole thing, and I'm like, why are you telling me this? Mm-hmm. Like, I've known you for 3 days. But now that I'm removed from the situation, and I've talked to my therapist about this, and I've, been able to assess it, this is a narcissist technique. Then when I started to feel like he was lying to me later, he starts saying to me over text, like, I don't think I can give you what I want. I'm going back to the Caymans. And I'm like, what do you mean what I want? Like, I don't want anything. I'm just like this fucking guy. And he also told me he was going back to the Caymans to be with his family. And he went to Prague to propose to his girlfriend.
Oh my God.
It's like
just so many lies.
It's crazy. Also, he's doing this I have no money thing. It's like, how are you flying to Prague and buying an engagement ring and all these flowers?
I mean, I did see the ring.
Well, it's bad.
The ring was...
No, it's bad. He looks at his phone and he's like, oh, this guy from my AA group, his baby mama committed suicide. And he's like, we're not that close. And I was like, okay. He then calls a friend, another guy from AA, not the guy whose baby mother just committed suicide. And he said, should I tell blank, congrats on getting full custody of the kid? But I'm telling you this so you see how not close to this guy
And
he
how
was.
unaffected.
How unaffected he was by
Okay,
it. But
you know.
here's the thing, I do think he's a psychopath. Like, I looked up, like, everyone's like, he's a narcissist. I'm like, he's a psychopath. Like, I looked up the definitive qualities of a psychopath, and it's narcissism, superficial charm, impulsivity, lack of guilt, lack of empathy. Psychopath. And that's exactly what he is. He didn't give a shit that he repurposed this tragedy of this man's baby mother killing herself to get out of fucking Korean barbecue. I started, like, I was very itchy, and, like, I go to my gyno, and she's like, who did you sleep with last? And I'm still
He slept with you unprotected?
Yes. I'm still so fucked up in the head that I'm like, it's not him. He would never give me an STD. And, wrongo.
I mean, Brittany, if he's sleeping with you unprotected,
No.
he's sleeping with everyone unprotected.
I know. He's still bad.
Yeah, shocker.
He got worse. I think he's worse now because he's manipulating and weaponizing recovery jargon, recovery language, this community, this circle, and acting like he's just like some virtue signaling fucking savant. And he's not. He's just doing the same shit with like a different spin on it. So
I think he thought maybe that was his way to come back to Hollywood, was to be like,
100%.
oh no, like, I'm in recovery, like, I have a famous sponsor.
I don't know. I guess
I mean, you just think you would learn.
Yeah.
That's all.
But I really do think...
How many videos do they have to make? I mean, there was
Right.
how many movies? There was like House of Hammer. There was, for his own sake, I really hope that he, just really stops and gets the proper help.
But that's what everyone was saying years ago. And I think he acted like he stopped. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. I don't even know if in his head he knows
how to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you listen to that, it should remind you of what came out with P. Diddy and Cassandra. It should remind you of some of the Predator stories you've heard as it's related to, some of the Nickelodeon stars, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. Cassandra and I touch on it a bit in regards to especially Alexa Nicola and what happened to her. But, Enty has a repetitive pattern of doing this over, years, and that's going to come out in today's podcast. So at some point, if the person isn't going to fix themselves, you kind of have to do a show like this to just put the word out so that nobody else gets hurt like this woman did. Now, this part of the podcast that I played you didn't even include where he bit her so hard that she had to tell him to please stop, that it was almost horrific. Like, it wasn't pleasurable. It was painful. And some other red flags that really freaked her out. I mean, and this was pretty bad, what I just played you, but that part was, also really bad. So now I think you're in the right frame of mind to understand what I'm about to share with you and why it really has to stop. This is just one example. Look at Alexa Nicola. She's the one who ignited allegations against Nickelodeon for not making her feel safe as a child surrounded by a bunch of adults, especially older men, having Dan Schneider cause her trauma. These are the allegations that both Jennette, McCurdy, and Alexa Nicola said about their experience with them, and similar type scenarios of being exploited, gaslit, manipulated, taken advantage of in a vulnerable state of mind, whether that be youth or depression or just a weak, you have a drug addiction, whatever the reason is that someone's exploiting your weakness. So, I mean, this kind of predator type behavior happens in multiple places. It happens in entertainment. It happens in the gossip sphere. It happens in the podcast realm. It happens with famous actors. It's everywhere. So it's just really important to do shows like this once in a while. And so let's get started.
Come on, bitch, let's go.
I just want to say thank you for having me on. And I did listen to your origin story, which I laughed a lot, but I cried a lot as well. And then you ended it by going on like a total rant about the ethics of free capitalism. And it was amazing and epic. And you're just a legend.
Wonder Woman.
Thank you, Cassandra. You're so sweet to me. And I'm a big fan of your bravery and what you're trying to do. As you know, I promoted Enty and Crazy Days and Nights. I was a fan of his. I believed that he was somebody who supposedly I came in contact with in the entertainment industry, because that's what he told me, but I don't believe that now. And I had sort of an unusual situation happen with Enty where he asked me to lunch. And then just because I think he asked me some questions about some of that origin story stuff that you know about from, my show, I started to tell him the horrors of what happened to me with my ex, who was definitely a narcissist and probably more than that, and really aggressively tried to hurt me, even though he was cheating on me at the time and had a double life. So this is not my first rodeo with men that are capable of anything. And it's shocking to a lot of people. It's hard for them to believe unless they've been through it. So I obviously felt a huge obligation to give this a platform because I can't believe that Enty was doing this to you from what you say, right? While he was listening to my sob story about my ex and kind of, being there for me. That's number one. Number two, I can't believe he asked me to lunch like he seems to have done with a lot of other people as like a pattern of getting them sort of enrolled. And he seems to target women that he comes in contact with through podcasting or working for him. And I guess number three, I found it so strange that Enty also kind of at a period of time seems to ghost me, but not at the same level as women he's like interacting with. It's just like, I say happy holiday and this and that, and all of a sudden he doesn't respond. So I was just curious, did Enty ever say anything about me to you?
He did. I mean, when he was here living with me, and I say living with me because in my mind he was living with me, but in reality he was just here on vacation, I guess. But when he was here living with me, he mentioned that he needed to have you come on a show about, I think, something to do with Real Housewives, but you were possibly upset with him over the lawsuit and a loyalty. I don't know. A lot of the times I wasn't sure like if his stories were real or what they meant because I'm just not in the pop culture world.
Yeah. Well, I think what he was alluding to, first of all, I was never mad at Enty. Enty and I spoke on the phone about the situation that arose with Diana Jenkins, and we were both very firm in our footing that we had the research that we relied on for that show. And it was possible that some of that research that had been submitted to Enty may have been questionable, which is why I think Enty backtracked on that lawsuit, because Diana Jenkins went on to sue Enty, but not me. And I think the reason that happened was, and I'm speculating, that there was an original Anon story that was submitted about Diana Jenkins that was posted on Crazy Days and Nights, which Enty, after the lawsuit happened with Diana Jenkins, removed. It was allegedly written by Robert Downey Jr., but as I said to everybody, I've partied with Robert Downey Jr., and I knew that he didn't write that message. Is just not something he would do. But needless to say, I think Diana Jenkins really honed in on that post because it was sort of where it all began, the rumors about her. And that's why I think that lawsuit ended up happening towards him and not me. But he and I were pretty firm in our footing that we could, present if needed what we relied on. Now, when Diana Jenkins wrote me a cease and desist letter, I chose to take down the content that she requested in the letter because I'm never going to question someone's own word on something over gossip. So if all I'm relying on is gossip or articles that have been written over the years or speculation around things that happened with press articles, etc., I am always, when someone reaches out to me and says, no, this is the truth from me, the source who you're talking about, that is always going to trump any gossip or even articles that I'm relying on. It's just the way I operate. So if she says to me, that's all false, all of these things that you're saying because they're being misconstrued or misreported, or it's just straight up lies on, gossip sites, then I'm going to believe her and take them down. That's just the way I operate. So I did, but I'm not sure Enty did. And I'm speculating, but I think he may have not removed what she had requested. And so therefore she went to the next level and escalated it to a lawsuit, which in my case, she didn't, because I said, okay, well, if the person these are all about says they're not true, then I'm going to believe her.
Right. There was a picture that he had retweeted with Epstein and a woman, and he had claimed that it was Diana Jenkins in the picture, the tweet, or the other person that tweeted it did, and he retweeted it. And so that I know was a point of contention, and he sent me a text saying, I finally found the tweet. Can you just screenshot it so I have a backup copy? Because that's something I recently went over on like a timeline episode on my Patreon as well.
Well, I recall that. And the woman in the picture is not Diana Jenkins. She looks similar to her, but she's somebody else. I mean, maybe that upset Diana Jenkins too, but I was never upset with, Enty about Diana Jenkins, and he never had that feeling from me, because I wrote him and told him I wasn't upset with him. And if he needed any support, I was here to help, because that's the kind of person I am. I don't, if I'm involved in something, I don't abandon the person because it's convenient for me. Right. So I had written that down to Enty. And so he knew that wasn't the case. And then I had reached out to Enty because I was pursuing doing a show with Deux. And Deux, I had told Deux on several occasions that she should collab with Enty before she did. And I said, he's so good at gossip. And she said, I love Enty to me in the DMs. I do. I love it. And I was like, great. And so it was a very social interaction. Deux, by the way, when I first started talking to her, only had like 40,000 followers on Instagram. Then Time Magazine did an article about her and she had like 1 million overnight. It was so weird. So Deux' whole thing changed from being like a small time influence, a non-influence blogger, to being this huge, like an overnight sensation. And she was suddenly had a team and a publicist, and it was like a book deal and all this stuff happening. So I had said to Enty, listen, I want her to do my 100th episode. And Enty, I said, could you put in a good word for me? And Enty seemed to say, okay. And then, I don't know, Deux had me reach out to her publicist and all this stuff. And it was really a ring around the rosy. And that's for another day, but it pissed me off. So that was it. But I wasn't mad at Enty ever about Deux. And I never said anything about that to him. So I don't even know what he's talking about. That's what's so weird.
I think he lies a lot.
Okay, well, that makes sense. So tell me the first time that someone doxed Enty, because we're going to get into who Enty is in a minute. So who the hell doxed him?
So I think the origins of him being publicly outed, I think it's happened many times over the years, but that people just haven't paid attention, where he's been able to just kind of block and delete comments, and so it goes unnoticed. But there was this woman, Rhonda Wolfson, who had posted under the Hollywood Reporter tweet, and she made a comment saying the blogger she refers to is Enty, real name John Nelson from Crazy Days and Nights. He ran many blinds about her. And like I said, it was from October 10th, 2017, 6:12 p.m. So, I mean, he has been publicly named before. I think that it just kind of flies under the radar.
Yeah, I see that here. And I've seen it also mentioned on Reddit, here and there. But I just was like, no one ever could confirm it because no one had actually ever seen him. So let me ask you this question. Is John Nelson Enty?
Well, yeah, definitely. And I mean, we had recorded an episode about Tori Spelling after he filed this stalking injunction on me. He actually recorded an episode with me. So, and it's like on Zoom. You know how Zoom works. It's all video. So there's a whole video of us recording together. And you can tell it's definitely him. If you look at his public congressional Instagram, that's still available publicly. It's John Nelson for Congress. You can see clearly it's him. And there's even a video of him talking about, we're going to ban guns and everything. So
this is John Nelson, and we're at the Ventura County March for Our Lives, where we're joining all these high school students and other students who are sick and tired of having guns in the school. Part of my campaign is to have the national standard be like California's standard. We're going to ban assault rifles. We're going to make background checks mandatory. We're going to
you can tell from the voice it's him.
And also you had intimate relations with him at your house, right?
Oh, unfortunately, I did. Yeah,
Okay.
I
So
mean,
it is him, right? I mean, it is him,
Yes.
the guy in the. Okay, so I'm just
yeah, it's him. I remember telling my friend Shauna
I mean,
before
besides the Zoom, right?
before I sent the picture of him to my best friend, I was like, look, he's not my type. Okay. Before I send this picture, I need you to know he's not normally my type, but he's so nice. He is so nice. And he's amazing. And I really like him. I'm in love with him, I think. But he's not my type. Okay.
Talk to me a little bit about this Congress page for a minute, because I find this so contradictory to some of his seemingly pro, Republican right posts. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, because Enty
he's
appeals to Q sometimes, right? Isn't that like, so I don't know. I thought that
100%. I mean, this was only in 2018. He was running for California Democratic congressional candidate. And I mean, he says he's a husband, father, small business owner, feel the burn. He's trotting his kids, for these pictures at protests to take the guns out of homes, every home in California, ban assault rifles. But then on his podcast, he completely panders to QAnon, to the point where BuzzFeed did an article about it.
Oh my God, where's that article? Let me grab that sucker. I mean, let's face it, most Republican right people want very little government intrusion, with the amendments directly enumerated in the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. And part of that is manifested in a right to bear arms and to own a gun and have that freedom. And many QAnon supporters, some of which are not right Republicans, some of which are, also believe of the importance of carrying arms. So the fact that most of the patrons in Enty's Crazy Days and Nights are right Republican or QAnon related in some cases, and again, I say in some cases, it's shocking to me that in real life, he's actually a Democratic Congress runner who's anti-gun rights.
It's amazing. I actually covered it for an episode of our podcast.
Oh my God, that's too good. Oh.
And I mean, I know that when Tiffany and I both recorded with him for Welcome to the Carterverse, which I used to have a podcast called Welcome to the Carterverse when Aaron Carter was alive. And it was documenting his wild online shenanigans every single week, talking about addiction, talking about abuse, trying to help him, his child, the dogs, everything. And then unfortunately, as you know, he passed away. When he passed away, we had Enty come on and do the final episode with us. So Tiffany, Enty, and I recorded, the night that Aaron passed away. And Tiffany said, honestly, I don't want to record with this guy because he went full QAnon, and I stopped reading his website. And I was like, come on, Tiff, this is going to be good for our podcast. And he has all the blind items. So we got on Zoom together, and she was like, hey, I have to ask you about this. Like, are you really like into this Q stuff? And he's like, oh, no, that's just for clicks.
Oh, that was off the show, not on the show.
Right.
Okay. Wow. That's manipulative. All right. Let me read this to you guys so you know what we're talking about. BuzzFeed wrote this: how celebrity gossip site Crazy Days and Nights went QAnon. This was dated October 15, 2021. Quote, I don't care about made-up Satanism or pedo rings. The very first post I read here was about Gary Busey trying to use gold doubloons as legitimate currency. And to be honest, I would just like more of that, please. It was early June and, quote, Penny Farthing had finally had enough. Quote, I've been a faithful reader of this site since like 2008, but I have just about had enough of the QAnon garbage that gets posted lately. The very first post I read here was about Gary Busey trying to use gold doubloons as legitimate currency. And to be honest, I would just like more of that, please. Posted to the celebrity gossip blog Crazy Days and Nights, the remark distilled the frustration many readers had been feeling as scandalous tidbits of Hollywood intrigue got crowded out by what another longtime reader described as ludicrous QAnon horror stories lifted from Twitter. The post Penny Farthing was replying to was a blind item claiming an actor had forced his friend to join a rape club. Commentators guessed it referred to Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. Another was an item about Bill Gates using the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to test experimental new foods on people in developing nations. Multiple posts have accused Tom Hanks, a frequent Q target, of licentious behavior on a yacht belonging to Hollywood mogul David Geffen, and an ongoing parade of posts described Hollywood stars abusing minors. Since 2006, people have come to CDAN for blind items that run the gamut from true, Kaylee Cuoco getting divorced, to ridiculous, Beyonce faking her pregnancy, to fantastical, Anna Wintour and Bob Marley had a secret baby together. The site has a well-earned reputation for being both prescient and endlessly entertaining, so it was hardly surprising that its devotees were irked by blind items that seemed to refer to QAnon, the collective delusion that I can't believe I'm writing this, a satanic cabal of Trump-hating, child-abusing, moneyed elites running America's politics and media. Okay, so I'll leave that there for now. But the whole thing is, even BuzzFeed notices that he's appealing in that way to Q. Now, what's unfortunate is that there are a lot of stories to do with abuse of children to do in Hollywood. And there are a lot of scandals that are quite believable. And in some cases, there are elements of truth in these wild theories, for sure. I've been many times shocked when I've done a deep dive to find out something that sounds totally fictional has an element of truth to it. It is based in truth. So, you can't just discard it. You have to think about it and ponder it, which is why I never tell you guys what to think in here about anything. I just tell you the information. But the extremism of it, like a pizza place and people are murdered in the basement of, has already been debunked. And some of the other things that have come out have already been debunked. So it's just kind of crazy to me that Enty is a Democratic congressional candidate. Just bringing it full circle.
Yeah, I mean, he boasts on his congressional website that he was holding peaceful protests for people to turn in their guns and everything. So it definitely is a huge contradiction to what you're going to find on his Crazy Days and Nights website versus his congressional campaign website.
I mean, can you imagine if Democrats found out they were getting their news from Tucker Carlson?
Right. Exactly.
That would be the best example of this I could think of, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So John Nelson, he's out of Northern California area. Isn't where he's from out in Northern California somewhere? Or is
he ran in Oxnard, but he was sending me schools and for my children to go to. Obviously we had to set up everything because we were moving across the country.
For the full scoop, join the Dishing Drama Dana Patreon. The link is in this audio description. It's only $6 a month and you'll get the best information and tea about the things you care about and even the things you don't know you care about. What are you waiting for?